Oh,
It was that trick. You got to add it to the calendar and then look at the calendar.
Right? Hey guys,
hello.
You're muted.
Jake, we
You're
can't
muted.
hear you.
You're
I
muted,
was
Jake.
added to the calendar and it still wasn't there. It wasn't until Rocco sent it to me on Messenger.
Oh,
same
my.
here. I had the same
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah,
I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I didn't have a link either. I was just
Oh,
Well, my link just went to poo. It kept yelling at me in Google errors.
you guys. Well, I'm glad that you're here, and those of you, all one of you watching, this is
Hello.
the Star Warriors podcast, and we are live tonight, and we are here to talk about the Bad Batch season 1. There's a lot to unpack here, so sit tight, probably grab a beer, something to eat, and pay attention. Okay, so let's go around here. First, I'm Rocco. I'm from the Critical Mass podcast on DFAT Entertainment. And of course, I'm also a proud part of the Star Warriors podcast. Super excited to be hosting tonight, guys. Thanks a lot for letting me do this. And whoever wants to go up next, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jake from the
Jake.
Campfire Chats and Bull and Moose Tavern podcast on DFAT Entertainment. And of course, the Star Warriors podcast.
Hi there. I'm Colin. I am with the Star Warriors podcast, and I have my camera at a weird angle, so all you see is my head floating in a black background. So you're welcome, Internet.
Excellent.
let Moses gather himself. I'm Ruben Romero. I write comics, and I'm also on the Star Warriors podcast.
And yes, I'm Moses on the Star Warriors podcast, and super excited to be talking Star Wars as always.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you guys here. Thanks so much for coming. And man, oh man, I love the Bad Batch. I'm just gonna say that right off the top. I love this show. I put up my toy collection behind me. I've got my Black Series Hunter. I've got my Omega Funko Pop, my Hunter Funko Pop, my Tech Funko Pop, and I've got Tech Black Series on his way, and I can't wait to put him on my shelf. But obviously, like I said, I love the show, so I wanted to get you guys together so obviously we can talk about it. So I'm just going to kind of pick at random here. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to pose a question and we'll all go around. And guys, just tell me your thoughts and we'll go from there. So Ruben, I'm going to start with you. You were first on tonight. So we'll start with you. We'll go to Moses, then Jake, then Colin. So your thoughts of the Bad Batch versus their first appearance in Clone Wars. Like, for instance, were their characters consistent? Did they do the usual good job of Star Wars? Did you like them better in the first few episodes that they were in Clone Wars, or did you like the whole series better? What are your thoughts on that, Ruben?
I mean, as far as consistency goes, that's Team Filoni. They can do no wrong. I mean, I'm sure if we dug deep and hard, there would be some continuity errors in some fashion. But overall, no, I thought they looked great. I thought the show overall, from beginning to end, was polished. It did look really, really good. I loved it. I mean, I loved them when they first appeared. I wasn't like jumping out of my seat when they announced the TV show. I thought they were a cool concept. I thought it was kind of like, in terms of just like D&D lore, like they were just like the perfect little band of the Fellowship, so to speak.
Yes.
They each fulfill a purpose. But this season proved to be more than that. I mean, even though it started a lot like that in terms of like, you do this for me and I'll do that for you. There was a lot of quid pro quo in the beginning. I thought it had an amazing pilot episode. Young Kanan. There was just so many great things about the pilot. But then as it went on, probably it wasn't until like Battle Scars where it really found its feet, I think, for me. But yeah, overall, I do love it. I do love it now.
Awesome. Moses, what are your thoughts? First appearance versus the show. Did it meet expectations? Did you feel there was good consistency?
Definitely good consistency. Like Ruben did say, there probably are a couple loopholes here and there, but they're minor. I think the biggest one was, Kanan's origin story. But even those are minor enough to go back to the exact important Star Wars phrase, it's always from a certain point of view. You know what I mean? So from his point of view, it was like that. Maybe some differences that were left out when the story was being told. So nothing that bothers me, because I could get really OCD about that, but nothing huge.
Right on.
I do remember when they were introduced in Clone Wars at that last season, that felt a little off there. Not that I didn't love those episodes. They were great, but it was just like, okay, who are these, that we don't know anything about him. It was kind of great to see Echo come back in, and that was the influence to me. But, I've never been into like the whole, it was just like its own group that just felt like, why weren't these characters mentioned before? And obviously they were introduced at that point because Filoni already had this show planned. I mean, there's no question about that. And so then I just thought, okay, Echo was the cool part of his return. And so when I went into this show, I was kind of all right, like, okay, it's Filoni. I know I'm gonna like it. Let me just enjoy this. But I loved it through and through. And to me, it holds a very, very, very important aspect of Star Wars is, while I'm sure we all agree the Jedi and the Sith are the heart of Star Wars and the majority of their stories, that a story can still be well told, still be exciting, still be lovable when it has nothing to do with Jedi and Sith, when it has to do with the world itself. And it just opens up the possibilities of, you can tell any story. It doesn't always have to be about Jedi and Sith. And by the end of the season, I just loved all the characters. It was some of the best well-written character development I had seen. Like, I just, it was good. It was, I really liked all the characters, how they interacted, how they built their relationships. And how it concluded, and we'll get into it in the follow-up questions. But there was a lot of good moments, a lot of good visual moments, and
I really like how granular they got at times, like everything from IDs, like how IDs were going to change over and the money change over, and really just kind of giving you these little pieces of that transition from Republic to Empire. Wild stuff. Jake. Oh, good.
Yeah, right. No, I was going to say it was really weird because, like, literally on the first episode, I was like, I wonder if we'll get to see this changeover there. And in a way, this story was to talk about that, the change.
Yeah. Exactly. Jake?
Well, I think anyone who listens to Star Warriors knows how I feel or felt about the Call of Duty Commandos. That is the Bad Batch.
Who invited you?
Here we go.
With that said, within the first few episodes, I really fell in love with a lot of these characters. And then we hit the Snake Road filler part of the season, where like 6 or 7 episodes could have been completely cut or condensed into 2 episodes. So overall, like the first 4 episodes and last 2 were a great season, with some heavy filler in there to give us characters we've seen before. Yay!
Oh, Jake. I mean, that's fair. You're entitled to have wrong opinions. That's okay. You're allowed to have them. No, but seriously, no, I get what you're saying. And I do get annoyed with some of those very obviously filler episodes. That it does get frustrating. Absolutely. Colin, what are your thoughts?
They're fetch quests. That's what they are. That is all that those episodes are. They are fetch quests for your D&D fans and your RPG players. That's what it is. So I loved their introduction in Clone Wars, but with how long they were running, how deep they were talking, you can tell it was a backdoor pilot. And it even cemented it more when you saw the pilot episode of the show itself, because their very first introduction needed to be on the back of a story we've already seen, which was sorry, and here the irony that I forgot his name of the Kanan. Of Kanan's backstory. Sorry. We had to go through Kanan's backstory in order to introduce these guys who have already been introduced to the mythos in the Clone Wars. So that was a little rough for me. I liked the episode in total, and I liked the show in total. I had like for most things now, I have to see them twice in order to fully appreciate them for what they are
Mhm.
versus what I first see them as. So, on second viewing, I definitely like the show a lot more than I did the first the 4 episodes of Clone Wars that they showed up in, just because, you know, you definitely get that, depth of character, obviously. But to Jake's point, the need to be piggybacking on previous characters so early on into this show indicates to at least me as a viewer that we might be running into a lack of confidence in this arc as its own thing, rather than trying to bring that extra part of the world into the story that people are already loving. So, you know, we'll touch on that a little bit later.
No, absolutely. I know what you mean. You know, you bring these tried and true characters on to kind of anchor or cement your viewership, and that can sometimes be worrisome, especially with something so fresh and so new. So speaking of that, I'm gonna combine 2 of these questions here I have on the outline I sent all of you, and the 2 questions I'm going to combine are your favorite character and why, and your favorite crossover character and why. And I'll go really quick. My favorite character that's new is Tech. I love Tech. I love his deadpanness. I loved just him completely. Like anytime he was going to be on screen or speak, I was either laughing or just enjoying it. And my favorite crossover character, honestly, I really loved getting Hera's backstory. I really loved seeing Hera and those episodes she was in. I thought that was awesome. So this time we're going to start with Moses, Jake, Colin, and then back up to Ruben, and we'll just keep going that way. So Moses, we'll go ahead and start.
I mean, I loved Omega. She kind of like tied the team together and gave the team character, I think. But you know, it was weird. I've never been a fan of, you know, the whole D&D. Each person has their own specific thing, but the chemistry was well written, I think, and it just played out. I mean, shit, I am having a brain freeze right now. But who was the big guy?
Wrecker.
Like, I was laughing nonstop. And I watched this with my significant other, Sonia, and she doesn't watch cartoons, and she's gotten into Star Wars with me, which is awesome. But the fact that she wanted to watch this and to hear her laugh at him, like making his jokes and doing his thing, was just like, it's capturing audience. It's doing what it needs to do. Mm. But I love the balance. I was surprised, but how well it was balanced between all of them. Mm-hmm. I love that, you know, your main antagonist is one of them. You know, I love that it was resulted to Order 66. I was surprised. You know, I went into it not thinking I was going to like it that much. And one thing that I appreciate with this show, and I appreciated it with, you know, it's the reason I prefer Rebels over Clone Wars, is none of these characters are in the latter stories. So whether they disappear somewhere along the way or they sacrifice themselves somewhere along the way, that risk exists. And by the time we got to the season finale, I was worried. I loved them all, and I was worried we were going to lose someone. And I honestly believe that somewhere along season 2 or season 3, we're going to lose a bunch of them, if not all of them. I mean, this was a Rogue One, you know? Like in Rogue One, when they started popping off the characters, I realized, shit, no one's going to survive this.
Yeah.
And so, I started feeling that about this, you know what I mean? Because it's just like, and that, to me, somehow created a more, you know, a greater love for each of the characters. Like, I'm worried. I'm honestly worried. I do think that, you know, some of them will survive, and we might even see them in some of the live actions, and I'm sure we'll discuss that in one of the questions. But no, I can't really say I had a favorite. They were just so well balanced that you know, each of them. You know, even Crosshairs just filled in this little link. And dude, I hated Crosshair till the end, where he was just like, "You guys left me," and I was like, "Damn, that hurts," you know. That hurts. So
no, definitely. What about a crossover character though? Like, what would you say was the best crossover from a?
Oh, I mean, 100%. Like Rex. Like, I mean, he's
right on.
When he meets Ahsoka in freaking Rebels, like,
Yeah.
it's just I love that he's almost become the link between all of them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Before we go to Jake, we have Casey here. His new favorite character is one that looks like Boba Fett. Hardy har har har.
Oh, so Omega.
And then, Walk from Insensitive Culture loved Wrecker, and he's definitely the Michelangelo to his Ninja Turtles. Yes. 100%, absolutely 100%. Jake, what about you? Favorite new and favorite crossover?
Wrecker, 100% Wrecker. Everything about him, from, first of all, he's the character class I play in D&D, the dumb guy who goes in and destroys stuff, to the fact that he's a huge softy with a stuffed animal who's probably the most destructive character in the entire group. I felt super emotional once his head injury started, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna start good soldiers follow orders and kill one of his teammates. This is going to be so hard to watch. That episode was so emotional when they got their chips removed. So,
yeah,
100% Wrecker. Favorite crossover character? Cut. Because talk about bringing a character back from left field, kind of a side story, and then adding emotion to the real world. A guy whose family is at risk because of who he is, who needs to escape if he's going to let his family live. Such an emotional story, that episode.
Yeah, dude, I wow, that's a deep cut right there.
Cut is a deep cut.
Yeah, right. Definitely. Thanks, Jay. Colin, what about you?
I'm gonna go a little rogue on this one here and lean into my voiceover fandom and say that D. Bradley Baker was my favorite character of this whole thing. For those who don't know, D. Bradley Baker voiced every single member of the Bad Batch and Rex in this show. He was all of the clone troopers throughout the Clone Wars. It's the fact that he can take the same base voice for these characters, one that's based off of another actor from one of the main movies, and then give them each individual characters and characteristics, is an awesome feat and in incredible acting and voiceover capability. But to Jake's point about that episode with Wrecker, where he does that shift, and I'll come back to this one later in the episode here. That shift, I loved that from an acting perspective because it was still that character. You could still hear it. It's such an easy thing to come back from it and just be like, I'm just another one of the clones here. No, he made it still Wrecker being that big, burly, I'm going to destroy everything, but still precise and deadly thing. It was so awesome, and I love that. And I know it's not a character per se, but the fact that you have a single human being doing all these voices and carrying the show literally on his back at this point, that's just bravo to the man.
I'm gonna say I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. I did not know it was the same guy doing all the voices, and extra respect for that. I mean, because that's the fact. I didn't know it was the same guy doing all the voices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And holy crap, man, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's a great point. So would you say that that's both your new favorite character as well as your favorite crossover? Because technically that answers both.
It could be a safe choice, but I'm actually going to say that the Grand Moff himself was my favorite crossover because
surprise
because he is, it's again an established character that is voiced by someone else, but the idea of bringing in someone who brings in what we knew from the original, the OG trilogy, and even a tad bit from the Clone Wars to kind of bring it all together. How do we merge Clone Wars and the OG into this world? And he was that great little initial bridge there because he wasn't the main guy running it the whole time. He handed it off to some noob, guy who
Yeah.
was going to change everything, get the chain codes, change over the credits, etc. But he was just that perfect little nudge in the right direction, and I loved having that there. It was
Yeah.
just such a subtle choice.
Yes, for Operation War Mantle, which was first brought up in Rogue One, which I thought was also very cool.
Mhm.
But Ruben, please regale us your favorite character, new character, and your favorite crossover character.
Well, I mean, we can all be on the Wrecker train. I do love Wrecker a lot, actually. What I love about him too is a lot of the other clones' dialogue is very precise. Like Hunter doesn't mince words. He actually looks like he chooses his word count very carefully. And you've got Tech, who's very deadpan, so on and so forth. But Wrecker, what I love about him is that he's almost got like all the mannerisms all the mannerisms that all the other characters don't have, and he's got them. So like when he goes to talk, he's like narf, you know what I'm saying? Like he's like there's like a lot of thoughts in there, but he's got to get out one like sounding, like one noise, one word before he actually gets his whole thought out. So I do love Wrecker for that, which again is something that you don't, there is comedy in Star Wars, but there's not that kind of comedy. And like he's definitely, he's in his own bubble. Kind of there's a few others that throughout Rebels and Clone Wars that kind of fit that bill, but Wrecker is definitely that for the show. But no, I would say my favorite new character, as cliche as it might sound, is Omega. Because again, for me, Star Wars, like what George Lucas told us, grown ass adults here, George Lucas is for the kids, right? Like it's not for us. We just so happen to like it, right? So what I love about Omega is that character in itself. If you sit down a child who is new to Star Wars or has seen Star Wars to some capacity, they are immediately going to identify with Omega, because Omega comes into the show bright-eyed and like, just in awe of everything that is going on around her. Just like us, the viewer, who are like, oh, what, we're back on Camino, we're in the cloning facility, like what's going on? Like, and then we're given this little girl who we automatically are like, okay, so is this a clone? Where is this clone? Why is she a clone? And then on top of everything else, all we've ever seen are clone males. So now to have a clone female, and who is so vastly, in age difference to our clones. Again, how's she going to hold her own? So I love that whole. And then I also love the effect that she had on my second favorite character, which is Hunter, and like how she makes Hunter grow. But we'll get into that, I'm sure. And then favorite crossover or legacy character. I mean, there's no mystery here, man. I'm fucking. Oh, oops, sorry, Facebook. I was wilding out when Cad Bane stepped on screen. Okay,
Yes. Yes.
Cad Bane is my guy. It's probably my favorite bounty hunter in the whole Star Wars universe. He's just cool, and it was good to have him back. And I love that whole fight sequence between him and Fennec. But it just kept bothering me, because like you could tell, like they're like, you're gonna get a lot of Fennec later, so we're trying to make you like Fennec. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I just kind of felt like she'd never get the drop on Cad like that. But maybe it's just Cad's lost a step. He is getting older. But yeah, man, I love that. That's why I was like I'm conflicted about what you guys were saying earlier about how like this particular show or this particular story kind of has to hinge on some of these backstories or characters that we've known before. And I think that just shows like the brilliance of Filoni, of like how he can kind of intertwine all of these things, because I think him and Favreau know something that I think either JJ was either too naive or too arrogant to understand, which is that we matter, right?
Yeah.
And like us fans really matter. And like when you hear John talk about Star Wars, like when you listen to like that Disney Plus stuff, like the behind the scenes stuff, when he talks about the fans, there's just like this level of respect that you could tell he really has. He's not placating. He's not like patting our little bums and being like, oh, you guys matter. No, he really means it. And I think Filoni, same thing. So a lot of this stuff just goes to show like how much they care and how much they hear us talk, like on the message boards, on social media. Because I myself, in the last few years have taken back and been like, I want more Cad Bane. And it, and essentially it's something that leads back. I'm not saying that my tweets made it happen, maybe, but it's just one of those things
Only
where
your tweets.
right, only my
So
tweets.
you're the one.
I am the one. Thank you. You're welcome, internet and Star Wars fans everywhere. But yeah,
So-
Cad Bane, Omega.
Ruben,
All right.
you're saying that Dave and John have watched more than the original Star Wars movie? Because that's all JJ watched before making Star Wars.
Oh God.
Listen, that wasn't an open invitation to bash my boy JJ. Okay, I admire and I love JJ. I just think that there's something that I don't think any of us ever really understand, and that is something that is the full weight of having to do something like Star Wars.
Oh, I can't
Right?
even imagine.
Like, and I think that for everything, and I look at it now like with everything, right? Like I used to be very, very critical of like just media in general, but as the more I was creating and the more that I was writing, and I think that this goes for all creatives. I think that we get to a level where we're just like, let me not talk any bullcrap because it's just hard. Period. So imagine
Yes.
being in a room, with Lawrence Kasdan and having to like strike that magic. Yeah, you could do anything you want, but at the same time you can't, right? Because we don't know the box that they were working within. So it's just one of those things where it's just like,
Yeah.
I think about it all the time. Like now watching The Mandalorian, watching Clone Wars the last season, watching The Bad Batch. I think about all the missed opportunities this new trilogy had, but again, we just don't know the full weight of what that means, dude. And like, hopefully one day we will. Hopefully one day we will all, because I know all of us all venture in different avenues and want to do different things. Hopefully one day we get to a point where we are working with something so established where we're like, damn, I feel bad for JJ. Sorry, JJ. You know what I'm saying? My bad.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he had a lot of bonuses to what he did, and I think he brought back a certain quality, especially in the production value to Star Wars that was
Oh
lacking.
yeah. Yes.
So yeah, I mean, we've all said it amongst each other. Is like those movies are great on their own. As a trilogy, they had issues, but yeah, I mean, obviously, this isn't the show. We're going to discuss that.
right.
Well, I think what the main concern is, and I think where Filoni is great, is you're not adding a story into this world. You have to tie it into this world.
Yes.
And so and you have to take all the elements that already pre-exist. And Filoni's mind with the Clone Wars has tied in these two trilogy, the prequels and the originals, that he obviously has the biggest grasp on everything. And I mean, he's clearly the protege of Lucas.
Yes.
And I mean, yeah, no, I'm glad that, Disney gave him the position that he has. And I have more hope in everything Star Wars now because he's kind of behind it all.
He's
Absolutely.
the fixer. He came in and made the prequel trilogies better through the Clone Wars, and he's going to make the sequels make sense through the Mandalorian, the Bad Batch, and whatever they give him.
100%. He's gonna make it all make sense. He's like, here, let me add a little.
He knows the pieces.
Let's not step too far out. All right, we will have we should have a whole Filoni podcast. We absolutely could, but let's get back to Bad Batch and someone that we've all brought up now. And I think let's skip ahead and just start talking about her, the glue who held the show together. It was Omega, and I think, Ruben, to your point before was, with Omega being on the show and being a little girl, like that drew my daughter in, and that allowed my daughter and I to really share this show. She fell in love with Omega, and that allowed us to share that. And I think that's what's the most important thing about Star Wars is just like family and like what it establishes there. But in terms of Omega, I adored her. I had no guess that she's quote unquote Boba Fett's sister, but it makes sense. They're the only two unaltered clones. Did you like her? Did you hate her? Did you guess that did anyone guess that she was Boba Fett's sister in essence? And Book of Boba Fett starts this December. We already know Fennec has spent a lot of time with Omega, and we know that Fennec is going to be on the right side of Boba Fett in Book of Boba Fett. So are we going to see an adult live action Omega in the Book of Boba Fett? And do what do you think about all of that? We're going to start with Jake. and we'll go Colin. Wait, who do we start with before?
You're in the right order.
Okay. All right. Got it. All right. So Jake,
Okay.
go ahead.
First episode, I was really annoyed by Omega, and I was like, "Oh man, this is gonna be like 5 Men and a Baby." This show, like, she's gonna be so annoying this entire series. And she grew on me, and she grew on me fast. She's probably my
Yeah.
second favorite character to Wrecker. Did I foresee her being a alpha variant clone of Django? No, I truly thought she was going to be maybe a crossbred first generation force sensitive clone. I thought this was going to get us into Grogu, force sensitive clones, Pelps, all that stuff. Am I disappointed she's a Django clone? Being honest, a tiny little bit. I thought they were going to go a layer deeper with it, but I loved the reveal that she was older than the entire Bad Batch
Yeah.
and actually saw them created, and that's why she knows so much. And I hope she makes a live action appearance in Book of Boba Fett and that she's still alive out there somewhere.
In full Mandalorian armor. Just let me
That
see
would be really cool. It would be really cool if we find out she's working with the what are they called? The Watch now?
Death Watch?
Bo
Death Watch.
Katan's. No, Bo Katan's
Oh, yeah, no.
org of the Mandalorians.
What are they? The Night Owls?
The Night Owls. That's what
Yeah.
they are.
That's all great thoughts, Jake. Absolutely. Absolutely. Colin?
Yeah, I would agree. At first, I saw this kid pop up, and I hate to admit I did that same sigh of, oh, here we go, and it's just like they're gonna shoehorn the cutesy, like child aspect of this. This is gonna be what is the comedy relief of it. They have to pick up after her, and it showed a little bit during that episode when they introduced Fennec. Where she's like, oh, I see the puppies. I'm going to chase the puppies. Oh, no, now I'm lost in the big city. And this is going to spark the whole scenario here. But to Jake's point, she grows on you. She really does, because there are certain points where she is so intuitive. She's so aware of the people around her. Maybe not the world, but definitely the people. And maybe that's just her experience from watching the clones around her grow up, that she herself has kind of had to grow up so fast and be more intelligent. She just doesn't know what the worlds and the universe outside of Kamino is like, which is completely understandable for any person, let alone a child. But the fact that there are some moments where she is just so downright intuitive to, people, the emotions, especially that I can come back to that episode, and I will again later, where Wrecker, she's like pleading for Wrecker to come back, and she's not acting like a little child. She's just acting like a person pleading with their friend to get out of this state that they're in. There's really good opportunity for her, and I'll touch on this a little bit later in one of the later thoughts, for her special characteristic, as every Bad Batch clone is supposed to have. And I'm hoping to see where that goes personally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say it captured my heart when she saw Dirt for the first time.
Yes.
And just
what an awesome moment.
And how much she loves her brothers. And I think that was huge, especially finding out that she's actually their older sister. Ruben, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, she's definitely my favorite. I knew right away. Like I like all that, just like all the questions and constantly just being again in awe of everything that she was looking at, and being able to interact with Clone Force 99. Like you could tell it was like a moment for her. Like at that point in time, her life was changing. So, and then as the show went on, like I said, the effect that not only that she has, officially on the whole team, but in particular on Hunter. I think that episode where Hunter tries to send her away, and in the end isn't able to do it. It just goes to show like how these clones really were bred for a specific thing, but are their own individuals. And Filoni likes to drive that point home with like like we see, Colin mentioned Cut, with Echo. You have these moments, Rex, but where you get these clones and like you get to tell these real personal stories, but they're the same person, right? And then with Clone Force 99, it's like, yeah, they all look different, so you can approach it in different angles. But I think that Omega brings out everybody else's best traits and best qualities, even though they don't want to. Even as far as Crosshair goes, and like the finale is proof of that. Like the things that Crosshair, the choices that Crosshair makes are because of Omega and the choices that she exuded through everything leading up to him making those choices, right? So it's like it could have gone a very different way, but because she acted the way that she did throughout that whole scenario, she saved his life twice. She saved his life, right? And then, so again, he's at the point of no return, right? Like, as far as characters go, right? Like, he's not going to go back. So the fact that he stays on that platform after they leave, after everything she's done, but the fact that he let them leave without a fight, the fact that he saved her and the droid, what is it, A2?
I loved him.
Yeah, he's good too. Just all of that goes to show the effects that Omega has on everybody around her. And if that's what you're like alluding to, Colin, that's like her ability, like if it's almost like a mutant power, like a latent ability to kind of move you to a more positive direction, that would be interesting. That would be interesting. But yeah, definitely Omega, hands down. I did not need any time. I knew right away.
I did love at the end when after he saved Omega's life, Crosshair said, "Now we're even." And it was the way he said it was like, "You're gonna go now, but if I see you again, I'm probably gonna murder you." And it was just like, we're complete. Like, that's it. That was your one time. Now we're good. But Moses, what are your thoughts on Omega and the Book of Boba Fett and her as a character?
I mean, I loved her as a character. Omega to me is a twofold character, and I think she works both in the story and behind the scenes as a writer's tool. Like we've mentioned all of this stuff already, or hinted at in our answers, but knowing that we have all these timelines, the prequels, the original, and the sequels. Once we get into a story, the first thing we think of is, I wonder if we can see her in the Book of Boba or even farther down. And so when I see a young character, literally the first thing that pops up is, all right, there is that potential. They can still be alive, kind of thing. And then it goes back to what Lucas said to Abrams when he was making, The Force Awakens, was just like, don't forget, Star Wars is also for kids. And so that was important to me because when you look at it, whether it be, Grogu, Baby Yoda, whether it be Omega in this instance, whether it be a little slightly older, but Ezra, they have that young character who's introduced into the adventures. And every time they throw that character into whatever story they're, Ahsoka was that in the Clone Wars, and you throw that character in, it's not just to throw in a kid in there, and it's not just for the kids. It's to get every audience member to be like, we're going to introduce you to this adventure through a character who hasn't been introduced to these adventures. We're not just going to throw you into the experienced Jedi, the experienced soldier. They're all going to be main characters, of course, and you can identify with all of those. But I love the way that when I see those characters, it just like, all right, I'm like, I'm going to follow them. I'm going to understand the world the way they see it. So she represented that, and I loved it. Yes, like Jake said, in the legend stories, a lot of the Clone War stories were Palpatine's attempt to make clone Jedis. So Grogu kind of fills in that scope as Disney is kind of tying everything into canon. And at first I thought that was what made her special. It wasn't. I wasn't disappointed per se. At first I was, because I was like, oh, there's going to be no Jedi element to this, no Force element. But as the story went on and I got more intertwined with these characters, I love the fact that it wasn't. I love the fact that this story can be told without that element. I mean, even Rogue One, which we mentioned before, as awesome as it is, I personally have to say that my favorite moment is Vader walking down that hallway and decimating everybody, right?
Yeah.
So somehow this entire great movie, the best moment is still Force related. And so I love that the Bad Batch was able to be such a good show and be like, hey, we didn't even mention, that kind of stuff. It was just alluded at first to bring, Order 66 in. And so, I love that she was that character that was, you thought it was that, but it wasn't. And she was still like, and another thing I loved about The Mandalorian was that, there's all these comic books mostly about how badass the Mandalorians are, right? And we see glimpses of it in Clone Wars, but it wasn't until The Mandalorian where you're just like, how can they really put up with Jedis? And then you see how badass they are, how badass Mando is, how badass freaking the Mandalorians are. And then when Boba Fett comes into play and I'm just like, oh shit, this guy is like, you know what I mean? And that represents, I'm like, so when you have her as a direct clone, you're not just saying, oh, she's related for the sake of related. Yeah, she is like top of the line. She can be one of the deadlier people, not because she's deadly, but just because she's just who she is. She's
her
a clone
genetics.
of this. Yeah, her genetics. And so, it builds a lot of future. And, like we mentioned before, I was never a fan of the Rambo quote unquote character. And she made me love Hunter. That bond they had between them. And with everybody, the scene where she's like, oh, they're all my brothers. She was such a good uniting tool, uniting the family within that show, uniting the prequels with the originals. The as a writer's tool, it was just a perfect character to just put all that stuff together.
Absolutely. I definitely adored her, most definitely. But let's completely switch gears from Omega. Let's talk about the Granular, and we're gonna start with Colin, and then Ruben, Moses, and Jake. So one thing that I really, really loved is the transition from Republic to Empire. And that is something personally, as a Star Wars fan, I have always wanted to see. One of my very few gripes with this show is I felt like they could go a little deeper, but they did go pretty deep. Especially with what was happening on Ryloth and other planets, with these governors with a lot of pressure on the Empire, and then seeing that transition and then the phasing out of clones to stormtroopers. Again, I thought they could go a little deeper, but they went pretty deep. So I just want to know how you think they handled that, good, bad, or indifferent. Colin, we'll start with you.
I'm going to agree with you. I think that there's a huge opportunity for the show, or just Star Wars in general, to tell more of that. What's the I guess you could say, for lack of a better word on my side here, the granular of it all. Where do we go from having a democracy to, an empire that is ruled by one person, and we strip away these freedoms. We literally stop one currency and go into another. They give those small details. And that, to me, at least for what we were seeing, was enough. It wasn't essential to the story of these guys as we were going through it, except when we needed to have that plot happen. But it was also written well into the plot to be, oh, this is why we have chain. This is what chain codes are. They're here to track everybody so that we can have, documentation of every single citizen, these trillions of people inside of the Empire. But also, we're going to use it as a mechanic to create some tension so that we can help this former character get off the planet with their family. Oh, you need these credits, but you can only use these new Imperial credits because the Republic Dectarians are no longer good. That kind of stuff. I personally enjoyed it because it was that nice little smart. I like it. But to your point, maybe just a tad bit more in later episodes. Maybe a full episode that goes into that in season 2 or season 3 if that happens.
Absolutely. Obviously I completely agree. Ruben?
Yeah, no, I think it's always interesting when they build on top of that. I think me and Jake had touched on this like early when we first started messing around on Star Warriors, where we talked about like the political aspect of it, and what that does to families and so on and so forth that are kind of caught up between the Empire and the loyalty that you have to show to the Empire, and we kind of see that in Rogue One, through Jyn, through the Urso family and things like that. And the novel does a really good job at kind of, beefing that up as well. So yeah, I think, they do a good, they kind of skim over it a little bit, in terms of what the Bad Batch gives us. They give us enough, like the credits change over, the chain code, the not leaving, you have to register to get off planet, so on and so forth. So all of these things are kind of just showing like the boot of the Empire slowly, kind of pressing down and yoking, the galaxy to kind of like a hold, so to speak. So yeah, no, I think as always, I think George is actually the master of the politics and that's ever so, evident in the prequels. He loves all that trade talk, all that, all those lines and rules and, geopolitical things. And so I think George is really the one who's heavy handed when it comes to those kinds of things. Filoni, I think, is more, the spectacle. He loves Star Wars, right? He doesn't like the politics of it. But yeah, again, it's something that builds out the universe and continues to give us a little bit more insight as to what that process was like for everybody in the galaxy when it happened and how it affected them. But is there an opportunity to tell a story? Yeah, I think so. I think me and Jake had it right when we thought about a novel. I think it's the best way to do it because you have the most room. I think if you go, political Star Wars cartoon or live action without any action, it has to be something else. There has to be something else to kind of tie it all together. But there is, again, it is interesting. It is a very interesting part of that universe.
Yeah, that makes sense. Instead of like a Downton Abbey, it'd be like a Downton Coruscant. Boring as hell,
right.
And only weird people watch it.
Nice.
Thank you, Ruben. Moses, what are your thoughts on the how they handled the switch off?
I think, like many of us, I do wish we had seen more of it. I mean, like I said, from episode, I mean, yeah, this is an element we always wanted to see. We always wanted to see that change. I remember reading the book of Ahsoka, and it was showing how, like, even the mention, they were on, I forgot what planet, but even the mention of the word Jedi literally had like a bunch of stormtroopers, like pretty much, killing you on the spot. Like you couldn't, which made it more realistic of how like the Jedi can be like wiped out from quote unquote memory by the time the original trilogy takes place. And so I remember when I read it in Ahsoka, I was like, oh, I want more of this. I want to see that change from Republic to Empire. And as I mentioned before, like even from the very first episode, I was like, oh, I wonder if they're going to do that. And then like literally, like it was the first or second episode, they start kind of hinting at that. So yeah, I love that they mentioned it. I wish they did more, but I also understand that there's a certain balance that, you don't want to shove it in people's faces because then it's just too obvious. They did a good job of it being slightly subtle and happening in the background. And, I feel like season 2 can hold more of that, more of the changes. I love that by the end, every few episodes they were, first they were doing the currency and then everybody's ID and then, or the other way around. And then by the last couple episodes, you were actually seeing the different. Is it me or that was like a good mixture of the armor between Clone Trooper, because it wasn't officially like Stormtrooper, but it was a little different than Clone Trooper. It was like a step between.
Yes, they
And
kept
so-
slowly throughout. They progressed throughout the whole season. The armor was transitioning slowly. So yes, you're correct.
So yeah, it was good to see that, and I can't wait to see more of it. But yeah, of course, I'd love to see more of it. But I love that it's a background thing. It's not about the show is not about that, but you can see it happening in the world. So it was really good. I got super excited in those last episodes when you kind of started seeing the non-clone troopers, and yeah, I mean, in fact, that was a big part of the last couple episodes. It was just a highlight. So if anything, that built up to that aspect. But no, yeah, it was good. I think one of the main things that makes The Bad Batch such a good show was that it takes place in such a key period, and we get to see that world changing while they're dealing with all the aftermath of Order 66.
No, absolutely. I that is such a tumultuous time period, and it's just funny that we know so little about it. I mean, we know the big aspects of it, but we don't know those small, fine little details. But it's such an important period in Star Wars. Yeah, that definitely, absolutely. Jake, your thoughts?
Star Wars and politics have always gone 1-on-1, but
Absolutely.
the books have always done a better job of exploring that, and because they can take more danger. With that said, I think this show had the right amount of lore building. You guys all mentioned the chain codes, the change to credits, but none of you mentioned like Saw Gerrera, them killing freedom fighters,
Yeah.
crosshairs
Good
killing
say.
troopers that wouldn't follow orders, Emperor Palpatine showing up and then being like, oh yeah, like on the hologram, this isn't what we fought for. And I would argue you don't think of those things because there were too many filler episodes between the first 6 episodes, which were amazing. Then we got to the Snake Road territory.
Speaking of political campaigns, Jake's on his soapbox right now.
Now, listener, I want you to know this is very important. We have just come full circle.
We have.
It's called a callback.
The show's over. We're all done. We're done now.
But no, I think for the show, it had the right amount of lore building in a world that's changing. We need a book placed during this time.
We need a Homeland version of Star Wars.
I want House of Cards in Coruscant between episode 3 and episode 4.
Can we get are we gonna get like a young Palpatine looking at the camera and giving us like witty, dark monologues?
Yes. Matt Smith as young Palpatine, giving witty dialogues.
Oh my god! If you're listening,
and instead of
the
first episode, him choking a dog out right in the beginning of it, he's like choking a bantha. He's like the beginning of the episode.
Force choking a rancor.
Yeah, there you go.
I hate useless things.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
More power.
I don't know. I'd like more of an "It's Always Sunny in Coruscant." Just a bunch of losers at a droid that own a cantina and the lower levels of Coruscant and their stupidity. I would tune in for that.
I mean, I know it's Legends now and it takes place later, but I just read Shadows of the Empire and talk about politic lore building in Coruscant. Jeez, that's that entire book.
I love that book. I loved it. But let's continue on, guys. I have 2 more questions for you. Thank you for hanging in with me. But hey, you love talking about Star Wars, so you're welcome. Let's get into our last 2 questions. We're going to start back on top. Ruben, Moses, Jake, and then Colin. So this is a very there's a lot of what's the word? This is a very sacred question to this group, and I know that for certain. There is Clone Wars and there is Rebels, and now we have Bad Batch. Where does Bad Batch line up in your favorites? Now, coming from me, all of you know Clone Wars is my jam. I love Ahsoka. That girl's like my daughter. That is how I look at her, and I love her, and I love the Clone Wars. I'm only going to put Bad Batch above Rebels because it's just a continuation of Clone Wars. That's the only reason. I loved Rebels. I loved it. I mean, I'm a Clone Wars guy, and that's the only reason why I'd put Bad Batch there. If it was something different, I'd probably put Rebels in front of it. But those are my thoughts. Ruben, we'll start with you. Where does it line up in these three animated film or shows?
I think they all have their own merit, right? The Clone Wars made the original trilogy better. Bad Batch continues that story and continues to grow that world. And Rebels gets us a little bit closer to, what's all part of our hearts. The reason why we're all here is Star Wars, right? So it's like almost those few steps before the next trilogy, right? So, but for me, I mean, Rebels holds a special place in my heart, man. I don't think a cartoon has moved me like that since like The Land Before Time, right? So, and my son's middle name is Ezra, because of that show. So I love Rebels, and then it's Clone Wars, and then it's Bad Batch. So yeah, I mean, but again, they all kind of can occupy the same space because there's no real drop off in storytelling. As much as Jake continues to gripe about filler episodes, it's part of Western serialized cartoons. You know what I'm saying? It's part of every cartoon series. I mean, how many filler episodes did Dragon Ball Z have? But it's just one of those things where we've and again, Filoni tries to give us the best that he's got, even though if Casey was here, I'm sure he'd argue against Puffer Pigs. But regardless, all Star Wars is good Star Wars. So to me, I think they all occupy the same space. But if like you were sending me on like a cabin in the woods where like you only get to take a minimal amount of entertainment and there's only like so much Star Wars stuff you could take, and we had like the seasons lined up, I would probably just rock with Rebels.
Right on. That's fair. And I think, yeah, go ahead.
DBZ and Snake Road again. You caught it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was rough.
I feel like it is a going kind of thing where like Bad Batch is really going to get tagged on to Clone Wars any way you look at it. And I think it just makes sense. But Moses, what are your thoughts on all three now animated shows? It was 2, now there's 3.
I mean, technically there's 4 if you want to include the Resistance.
I don't want to though.
See, so I'm going to be a little biased here, only because I just enjoy all Star Wars. I had this one, I went through a phase of just going through all the Batman comics, and I started to learn that there's different writers, there's different artists, and you'll get different flavors. We can love the cheesy TV show as much as we can love the badass Dark Knight comic books.
It's true.
So I've learned to look at Star Wars like that, and even like the original, holiday special, I enjoy watching it for as cheesy as it is because it's Star Wars, and I actually enjoy the Resistance. But yes, from these, I'm gonna have to go and follow up on Ruben and say Rebels is my favorite. It has, not only is it my favorite from the animated, it's probably some of my favorite of all Star Wars. Kanan is my all-time favorite Jedi. Kanan's scene, and I won't do any spoilers, is my all-time favorite scene. If you go to iTunes, it tells you how many times you've listened to a song. I literally every now and then I'm just feeling moody and I put that scene on because I just need to watch it. The second follow-up scene is the Ahsoka scene in Rebels. We all know the scene I'm talking about.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So the fact that Rebels holds all these key scenes that are my top favorite scenes, and back to what I said before, Rebels characters had a more risk to their characters. You didn't know what was going to happen to them. Something I never got from Clone Wars because we know where everybody ends up. I'm also going to say that I split Clone Wars into 2. I think the first 3 seasons are their own thing. They're very random. They're very battle oriented, and it's like how every episode begins with almost like the newscaster. This is happening in the universe.
Yeah.
The first 3 seasons were more like that, and the second 3 seasons, despite still being built into stories, it wasn't single episode stories. It was 4 or 5 episode stories. and
Yeah.
they started tying down to what was going on. So to me, the first the first half of Clone Wars and the second half of Clone Wars are entirely different shows. So after Rebels, while I think that the second half of Clone Wars is the best, is good, I think Bad Batch is better than the first half of Clone Wars because it has that thing. You don't know where these characters are going to end. It is one overlying story versus random episodes of random stories. And I like that. I like the idea of tuning in to see what's not to see a random episodic thing, but to see this ongoing story. And so, yeah, Bad Batch is, I think, somewhere in the middle. It's not as good as those final episodes of Clone Wars, but it's definitely better than the first half of Clone Wars.
Right on.
Rebels to me is on the top of all Star Wars. I mean that if any of our listeners haven't seen Rebels, freaking go watch it right now.
Oh yeah, you should be watching Rebels. That's a prerequisite to watching this show. No, wait, please stay and watch us. Anyway, I would have to say the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars is some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen in my life, especially having Ray Park reprise his role as Darth Maul. Just amazing, fantastic. But Jake, on to you, my friend. Same question, obviously.
First off, Moses, you're on to something. And Dave, I know you're listening. You love our podcast. You need to do an anthology cartoon taking place right after the fall of the Republic that shows us the crumbles. That is that randomness from the first 3 seasons of Clone Wars, where sometimes we don't even know the characters and what will happen with them, so we can truly see that fall we've mentioned.
Ooh.
So
Stamp it, sell it. Our boy is going to be starting to work for Disney.
Please give us Rise of the Empire, a cartoon that is anthology. So my list, top of the list, the Mandalore arc of season 7.
Okay.
Rebels, Clone Wars, Bad Batch, the rest of season 7.
Wow.
You're saying the Bad Batch of season 7 is like at the bottom,
is below the Bad Batch.
Agreed. That Bad Batch wasn't even close to as good as the
Nice.
And then as much as I loved having more Ahsoka, the Ahsoka being a burglar with the 2 girls.
And they came back, and
they did.
The Bad Batch gave them so much more than we
Right.
had out of them in Clone Wars.
As I said, the rest of season 7 is below the Bad Batch.
To be clear, the season 7 Bad Batch and Ahsoka episodes outside of the Mandalore portions are nothing more than a prologue to Bad Batch.
Yeah,
it's weird. Like, those episodes should be like Bad Batch episodes.
They're almost all multiple backdoor pilots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of
Yes.
in terms of what they were trying to do for the show and setting up the show. They were trying to give it legs so that the minute that we went into it, yes, they give us that whole Kanan kind of introduction, but what came before it was so much more. Was the intentions were to spoon feed us that kind of storytelling and the way that how they were going to do it with Bad Batch. So I think in a lot of ways it was smart. Yes, it's filler, but at the end of the day, they're planning for the future, and I think a lot of that. And now they're getting bold, man. I mean, like, they're giving us live action characters and turning around and giving us more of those characters in an animated form. So like where are they blurring the line? We don't know just yet. Because again, like, one thing that I wanted to touch on before we wrap this whole thing up was the fact that everybody went into the Bad Batch thinking that we were going to end with this guy, right? Because it was the feeling that we got from the Mandalorian and the Bad Batch being introduced was that these stories were going to tie up in a very specific way, and we might just still get there. But we thought it was coming very soon. And when it ended in Kamino, I was like, oh, here it comes. Like they're gonna go into like some room and he's gonna be floating in some tube and they're gonna take him out, and he wasn't there. So again, it's eventually gonna come, but it's just one of those things where Filoni is going to take his time because they can. You know,
Oh yeah.
it's all merch and money, right? So and it's gonna have its good amount of filler episodes to where we have to kind of wait to see the full picture. But all in all, I think it's all gonna tie together.
Oh yeah, I think they're gonna play the long game on this, and then we're gonna get to Colin for how it's stacked up there. But I will say that the last 4 episodes of the Siege of Mandalore for Clone Wars, that was all for the show The Mandalorian. I think we're definitely going to be seeing something regarding that in The Mandalorian. But anyway, Colin, how did this stack up for you with the animated features?
It's a hard question because if you're going to ask me if I'm just looking at each of these as a whole, I can't necessarily do it. I do it with huge gripes. I would have to say Clone Wars, then Rebels, then Bad Batch. But they all have incredibly great shining moments that make them stand out from the other at different points. I mean, how many times have we said it in the last 15 minutes that those last 4 episodes, I mean, you know, beyond the backdoor pilots that were the first 8 episodes of the final season of Clone Wars, it literally starts with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away when those 4 episodes start. So that's clearly where we're trying to pick up the Clone Wars story, not these previous ones that introduced side characters that were supposed to be another storyline. But I digress. But I mean, I had my issues with Clone Wars at first. It was just not for me at first. I had to barrel through it in order to get to the stuff, the meat potatoes that I loved. Rebels, same kind of idea. I had to barrel through the first season in order to get to what I loved on that. And with Bad Batch, we had to get through the Snake Mountain or Snake Road, or as Jake's calling it, in order to get to the things that I really loved there. So it's a hard ask for me to make that case, but I make it with huge caveats. Again, Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch.
Absolutely. I think that is absolutely fair and makes sense. Guys, the last question I have for you tonight, which I think is the most obvious. Now, I know, again, we've said this already. We're going to say it again. I'm going to thank you, Dave Filoni, for listening. You're going to want to listen here. It's very important. So we're going to start with Moses, Jake, Colin, and Ruben to close us out on this question. Last question. What do you want to see in season 2 of The Bad Batch? And Moses, we'll start with you.
I'd like to see more of the same. I'd like to see a little more of the progression of the world, the Empire kind of taking over. It would be cool to tie in some Jedi-related stuff, but I don't think it's necessary anymore. And in fact, while I won't be disappointed if I saw it, I hope they don't. I hope this kind of stays its own story that doesn't revolve with that. Maybe it revolves in around where like it's happening in the background, but it's not a focus point. So I think that would be good. I'd love to see, I hate to say it, but I love to see some deaths because I think those are important, impactful moments. And again, we don't know where these characters are in the future. Side note that I was thinking about while we were talking before, does anybody remember which of the clone troopers are with Rex in Rebels? It's not any of them, right? Or I mean, it's still like
Breaker, isn't it?
Was it? So I mean, what like regardless, it's just making me think of like where these characters might end up. I think it would be cool if, you know, while we might lose some, we see some of them, whether in live action or not. I think it would be cool to see where Omega is kind of what she's growing up to be, because that might tie into, I think she's the biggest character which we might see in live action, the biggest chance. And so it'd be kind of see her take the right direction to where she'll end up being. But I just, you know, I'm in it for the stories. You know, I just want to see impactful moments. I know we didn't mention favorite scenes yet, but as quiet and as simple as the scenes of the Camino episode were, the way it was sinking, the quietness and the depth. I mean, it just made me think of Subnautica for those who have played it.
Yes.
The thing is just sinking into the bottom of the ocean, and it's representing this loss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which was also big into the story, because you're like, where is Camino in the original trilogy, right? And so you're seeing that
Answered.
visually amazing. Like, it gives me goosebumps just thinking of how that scene was drawn. You know, like just sinking and the lights and how, and I just want more of that. You know, to a TV or a movie aspect, you know, where you can expand on thoughts, when you can expand on all this lore when it comes to novels and books and written stuff. The visual medium gives you a visual thing. You know, it's why cinematographers are so important to a movie or a show.
Yeah.
And those scenes were some of the most beautiful, artistically visual scenes I have seen in Star Wars. It was eerie. It was impactful, and I want to see more of that. I want to see those moments in between the story where you're just like,
Yeah.
you know. And so, you know, more of the same. Give me more of the same, and I'll be happy.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I want that too. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey,
Jake.
All right. So I want more Omega development. I want a standalone Crosshairs episode with him in the Empire and seeing some clone racism around him, because we're already seeing it in the show. I want a Coruscant episode. And then what I really want is to follow Nala Se. And all right, we're getting into Legends. We're getting into Thrawn. Mount Tannis. I want to see Mace Windu in a cloning chamber, so that somewhere between episode 6 and episode 7, Luke has to deal with his Joris Kobath, who is now Mace Windu in canon. Just saying.
I love you so
You're pulling in Thrawn through Ahsoka. We don't really know Luke's story between episode 6 and 7 that well. You can do this with Mace and bring back Samuel L. Jackson and have him trying to re-find the Jedi Order in between all of it.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Build us that lore,
Give me
Dave.
Sebastian Stan as Luke, man.
I was just
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
say that. Let me
I
see.
wanna
Sebastian
see-
Stan.
Him and what's his name? You know how like Lando mentions like, oh yeah, Luke and I were looking around for Jedi stuff. That is a show.
Oh,
Yeah.
him and
Man, you got-
Donald
what's his
Glover.
name? Come on, yeah, Donald Glover. Let's do this and bring Mason right there.
Absolutely.
And maybe Amelia Clark's character running the crime
Oh,
syndicate.
Kira. Yeah.
She's in the comics,
Yeah.
right? So they're kind of building
Yeah.
up in the comics right now.
I would like to see that them dealing with the crime syndicate more, since they had
So-
that one episode and having to deal with her.
Mm-hmm.
We will see, only because she's about to be the front runner for Star Wars comics. Like she's about to get her own comic line.
Oh, damn.
Yeah,
Through Star Wars, Kira's story. So they may forego animated because of what this huge comic book campaign they're about to do called Crimson Reign. Crimson Reign will show Kira at the head of Crimson Dawn. That's about all we know right now in the comic book world. But yes, Jake, absolutely. I actually agree with every single one of your points. I agree with all of you so far. I love all of it. Colin, what are you looking for out of season 2?
I love the idea of more depth of character. Obviously, I love the individual one-off characters that get their own little backstory. Everyone has their own mission or something like that. Something that gives a nice little flashback. Even like a memory within each episode. Each character gets about 3 or 4 minutes to kind of live in their own anthology story within the story. But 2 things that I desperately would love to see. The first is, because I'm suspicious of this as all hell, in the first episode when they get back to Camino, after the first planet mission and Order 66 happens, there's a fight that breaks out in the cafeteria, and everyone gets into the fight. She starts it, Omega, and everyone joins in except for Crosshair. He sits there and he's eating. He's not having any part of it, and it's all kind of chaotic going on around him until someone ruins his food, and then he gets in on it too. And to me, I saw that as sort of like a foreshadowing of what was happening with season 1, where, he didn't fight against the Empire and all the other clones and everything that was going on until his dish got screwed up and he, needed to fight because he had no other alternative at this point. And there was something else that happened at the end of that fight, and that was that Echo got knocked out and eliminated from the fight. I would actually really like to see Echo be killed off in season 2. I think that he is the last remnant of Clone Wars that is no longer needed. He's that last little crutch. We now have Crosshair back in the Bad Batch, and now we have the 5th member as Omega, so we don't need this 6th member that really doesn't have much other than he's the android of the crew. So that would be the one big thing. The only other thing I would like to know is, I brought it up earlier, that all of the clones have like some weird characteristic. One is strong, one has great senses, one is a huge sharpshooter. Well, sorry. And the other one's got huge intelligence. They all have these big gifts. What's hers? And I think they've hinted at it here and there, is that she has this innate ability to pick up talents. She's been mimicking Hunter throughout the show. She picks up the skills very quickly. She picked up the bow very quickly. She picked up how to defuse bombs and how to rearm them very quickly. I think they can go into that, and it becomes this innate ability that she has, that she can just pick up these talents from others, which could lead into not necessarily force sensitivity, but maybe the ability to fight with Jedi weapons, which would make her kind of even more badass in my mind. I would like to see them explore that in her character arc.
Absolutely. But I challenge that in saying, if she is like Boba Fett, an exact clone of Jango without any additives or fillers like the other clones, then wouldn't that lend to the fact that she is a straight up badass Mandalorian that can pick up a weapon and
the baddest of asses?
Well, that's true. But you saw how she struggled with the bow until she, finally stopped thinking about it a little bit. Fun
That's
thing.
True.
It's like, I don't know why I didn't pick up on this until the second viewing, but literally they called him in like one throwaway line, Boba, he was known as the Alpha and she's the Omega. I'm like, oh geez, really? Why didn't I pick up Alpha and Omega here?
Yeah.
Well,
that's true.
In all honesty, that gets into a really good question about where force sensitivity comes from. If a clone could have force sensitivity, but Nala say could have always just injected her with a ton of midichlorians.
We are not going to. Nope. And all the nope. We are going to nope that to nope.
Everybody just dropped off of this podcast.
Yeah, everybody's gone. No, lastly, Ruben, round us out, my friend, on your wants or needs for season 2 of the Bad Batch.
So kind of just to like go full circle on what like Colin was saying was, season 2 definitely needs to have its some sort of consequence for this team. I feel like everybody kind of like skated by on like the skin of their teeth in that finale. I actually thought we were going to lose a couple people, and then we didn't. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. You're holding out on us. And Filoni does like to twist the knife. I mean, I didn't think we would lose Kanan, and we lost Kanan. So it was one of those things where I think the stakes need to go a little bit higher, because again, not only they're not a part of the rebellion, they're not part of the Empire. They're wanted on different sides. So it's kind of inevitable that something does happen to them. So I don't know if I need anybody to die, but I do need for the stakes to be risen a little bit. Another thing that I do want is for us to get a little bit more into like as far as like maybe a time jump, a little bit of a time jump, get us closer, not exactly to Rebels, but close enough to where, like Colin was saying, we're able to shed the weight of Echo being the crutch to the Clone Wars, and maybe we can do something with like Zeb, or maybe even Hera, because she's already been on the show as a younger version of herself, to where we build a bridge towards Rebels. And like now these three shows kind of coexist as like one show, right?
Yes.
Just different angles, right? Different points of view, so to speak. So I think that needs to happen so that we can see the progression. Um, I don't know how much I need any of these characters live action, right? Because up until this point, I don't know how important Omega is going to be and what Omega can bring to what I think the Book of Boba Fett is going to be about, and what the further story of the Mandalorian is going to be. I think that Omega and Clone Force 99, they fit a certain they're a certain vehicle. We're going to ride that vehicle to a certain point, and then we're going to get off, and there's going to be a larger aspect that we probably weren't even thinking was going to happen, which is somewhere where I think we'll fall along the line, somewhere where Jake was talking about, where that Thrawn trilogy gets to live and exist and breathe as its own creation, and a mixture of what Timothy Zahn brought in and what Dave Filoni is doing and what John is doing with Mandalorian, and how all of these timelines can kind of finally meet at a nexus point, so to speak, and say, boom, this is what we've been leading you to. And this right here, once it's over, boom, here are the two double suns on Tatooine, and there's that young farmer boy that you all love and grew up with, and you know that story. And then finally we can go from there and go from that to whatever stories they want to lay out to kind of make sense of the new trilogy, and make it, what they've done with this original trilogy and the prequels. So yeah, I don't have any wants or needs. I just think that there's definitely story points as a writer in my mind that you have to hit, and I think that time is definitely one of those things where we have to kind of move it along so that we can get to certain things that we all want to see as fans. And I think the best way of doing that is by bringing in characters in season 2 like Hondo, Zeb, Chopper, seeing the world of Rebels kind of start to grow there as well.
I'd love to see Hondo. I'd absolutely love to see Hondo.
Rocco, just because I put this in the chat, I need to throw this out with my crazy theories. The Bad Batch exploring a Jedi temple, and Omega finding the helmet of Mandalore the Great, aka Revan's helmet, canonizing Revan even more, adopting the mantle of Mandalore the Great, becoming the Book of Boba Fett villain when we see her as Mandalore the Great.
Oh my gosh.
When is season 2 supposed to come out? Because Boba's coming out first.
Yeah, I think Boba's coming out
build
first.
up to that.
So
it has to be
Boba
written as a filler.
So Book of Boba Fett is like
December.
this December.
Yeah.
And then at a year from that is Mandalorian season 3.
Next December? I thought it was earlier.
No, it's next December.
Yeah,
They
they're
pushed
getting a
it.
full year.
What about
What if-
season 2 of
Bad Batch. They haven't yet
mid-year?
said when. It hasn't been said yet.
What
All
if,
we know is
what
we're
if-
definitely getting it.
What if Omega's the armor in the Mandalorian?
Ooh, that's good. That fits. See, there's little ways to make it fit. And, you were talking about, how everything interconnects, Ruben. And one of my thoughts, whenever I think of some group traveling space unrelated to the main stories, is I would love, and now we're seeing transition between anime, animation and live action. I would love to see Cal and the Fallen Order group bring into the stories, and Bad Batch would be a nice little group to run into them.
One
Get
thing
that story going.
One thing I definitely want to mention before we go is I love their use of comedians. In The Mandalorian, we had Amy Sedaris, who was just so wonderful, so lovely. I loved her every minute she was on the screen. I love seeing Amy Sedaris. And here we had the great Rhea Perlman as Sid, the wife of Danny DeVito, one of the funniest women I've ever seen in my life from Cheers. The woman is a legend
Yes.
in comedy, and she was Sid. I saw Ree when Sid was puttering around her cantina. I saw her in Cheers.
Yeah.
That's
I feel like
what
that was
saw.
probably the necessity for the character. Like, we gotta have that
Mhm.
little nod here to those who will remember. Give her a bar to tend.
It was so perfect. It was absolutely perfect. But hey guys, thanks so much for joining me tonight. I really love the show, and I'm so happy you guys loved it too. I just thank you for being on with me.
Thank you.
Man, well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for
I
having us.
love everybody here.
Yeah.
We get to talk about all
It's
this.
all
stuff.
love.
It's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, let's go around. If you guys have stuff to plug, Ruben, we'll start with you. Plug away, my friend.
Plug away. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, I write comics. I'm currently co-writing and co-creating a book called In Fairy with another Star Warriors and DFAT legend, Mr. Casey Bowker. We launch In Fairy 1 and 2 on September 15th on Kickstarter. Make sure to check that out. Other than that, you can check me out on Twitter at Ruben the Writer, on Instagram at Ruben the Writer, and make sure to listen to DFAT Network.
Hell yeah. Moses, you got anything to plug?
Nothing other than everything DFAT produces, man. I'm a follower of all your comics. Ruben, thank you again for this. Got it today. I am super excited for that. It's another one that Ruben's writing, The Illusion Witch. But yeah, anything you guys do, I'm here to back it up. I love you all.
And we love you for it. Jake.
Campfire Chats, Bull and Moose Tavern podcast on DFAT. Dave, I'm available. I pitched a ton of ideas. Hire me for Lucasfilms, man.
This is your virtual CV.
This is-
Dave Filoni.
Are we on LinkedIn right now? Is that,
Yeah.
This is
that
a
what
we all
LinkedIn
have-
is this-
podcast.
Resumes on there.
If I knew that we were going to interview with Dave, I would have worn a tie because,
I would have put a cowboy hat on.
or a cowboy hat.
He's not a
you know
tie
what I'm
guy.
saying?
Come on.
No,
It's a
guys,
Star Wars tie. Listen. But I did not know we were interviewing. So, Jake, if you get the job, buddy, you know what to do.
in all honesty, we should hunt down trying to get Chuck Windig on the pod.
That'd be awesome. That would be
Don't
awesome.
tease me with a good time.
Yeah,
I mean, we
seriously.
should try. Aftermath. So
Yeah. Colin, what do you got to plug, my friend?
Other than the hair follicles that are starting to go in my ancient age here, nothing. Just, as said by Moses, follow these lovely gentlemen here and all the hard work that they're putting into the great content here on DFAT. If you need a sensual voice to take care of all of your voiceover needs, I am always email away to take care of that for you. Boy, that sounded a lot worse out loud than it did in my head. So we're going to navigate away from that.
Colin, are you working on any shows right now? I know, you're in Western New York. You're always on some show right now, right?
Well, for any local people, we've got an upcoming show out here at Blackfriars Theater for anyone in late October. We are going to be opening up Silent Sky. It is a play that follows the woman who pretty much changed the way we measure the stars, Henrietta Leavitt. She is a legitimate historical figure who helped us map out the universe as we know it. Without her, we wouldn't have that. So come see this. It's a really awesome play, wonderful, hilarious, and the actresses I work with are just some of the most stellar people you will ever meet, let alone their incredible talent.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That is fantastic. All right. As for me, y'all know I'm Rocco, or the Rockiness Monster of the Critical Mass podcast. The show is trash, so you should definitely listen to it. Obviously, I'm part of the Star Warriors podcast, as well as one of our newest shows, Listen Up Casuals, where we break down movies and TV from the comic book aspect. Our next episode that's coming up, we are merging with Gutsy Media podcast with Bob, and we're going to be doing an episode titled Why So Serious? And I bet you can guess who we're going to discuss for the entirety of the show. That's next week.
Aquaman.
Yes, nailed it. Nailed it.
Very awkward
Wrong. They're gonna be
dancer
talking about
under a
someone from
flash of
Marvel.
light.
Yes,
I love being
Aquaman.
right.
and Aqualad, actually. But thank you. I love being here with my favorite group of scruffy-looking Nerf herders. All of you out there in Star Wars land. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.